Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan Little for PokerNews.com, and today we're going to be going through a hand from early in a $3,000 buy-in World Series of Poker event. We get King, Queen of Clubs in the low jack seat. We will be playing this hand literally every time. If my opponent to my left is getting ready to raise, I'm still playing the hand. We are happy to play King, Queen suited. Only the big blind, a generally splashy player calls. This player, I remember, was playing more than his fair share of pots. Didn't seem to be absurd, didn't seem to be running huge bluffs, but was definitely in there. So flop comes ace, 10, 2 with one club. I have king, queen of clubs. And now I have to decide if we should check or bet. This is one of the spots where this definitely heavily favors my range. So this is a spot where we should be betting very frequently. If we are going to be having some hands that want to check, it is going to be hands that have a decent amount of showdown value that if they bet and get called, they're not really loving it. And right here, I think that could be the case. If we bet the bet the flop and get called, we certainly don't love it, right? That said, I think it's fine just to go ahead and put out a small bet. Your opponent may fold out to hands like pocket fours, which is great. We're going to make the nuts every once in a while when we get a jack, and we really want to be able to build the pot. And if the pot's tiny, we're going to have a hard time building it. So I'm a pretty big fan of just continuation betting pretty frequently. Especially if you use a small sizing. If you're just ever picking up the pot, that is a very nice success. And, I would be betting here small pretty much my whole range. So I bet small, opponent calls, turns a 5 of spades, and now the opponent checks. So once the opponent makes it through the flop, it means they probably have either a made hand of some sort, probably a pair better, or a draw of some sort. The draws could be as weak as queen-jack. I guess it could be stuff like 5-4, it could be 4-3, right? It could be hands like that. So now I have to ask, if I bet again, can I make my opponent fold out a lot of their made hands? And I think the answer is generally no. I think a lot of people are going to call again if they have a 10. And if they have a draw, they're going to call or they're going to raise one of the two, and I'm not loving it. Obviously, if I knew I could bet with king-queen and get called by 8-7 of diamonds, I'd be thrilled. But you don't know that. Recognize that whenever you're playing, you don't know what part of your opponent's range that they have. A lot of people get in their minds, oh, I really need to protect against the draws, or I really want to make pocket threes fold, right? But we don't know what the opponent has. For all we know, the opponent's just sitting here with an ace and is literally never folding. So with this hand, I don't think we need to bluff. We actually beat all the draws, which is very, very relevant. Whenever you have the best high card hand, and there are a lot of draws available, realize they actually beat all the draws. And when you beat all the draws, you pretty much have a marginal made hand. And when you have a marginal made hand, you want to get to the showdown as cheaply as possible. So river's the 4 spades, and now the opponent bets 500. So clearly the opponent has way more threes in his range than I do. So for that reason, we should at least consider folding. And you may be looking at this and saying, well, the opponent's splashy. Isn't that a good reason to call? But actually, I think the answer to that is no. In this scenario, if the opponent's calling with a lot of stuff pre-flop, notice a lot of stuff includes a lot of random 5s, 4s, 3s, and 2s. Like more than a normal player, right? For all I know, this guy just calls with something like king 4 offsuit, right? And when people make this small bet on the river, usually, not always, but usually it's the sign of a very marginal made hand. So then we have to ask, should we raise? The problem with raising here is that if I raise, if my opponent is paying attention at all, he realizes I probably have almost no 3s in my range. And if I have almost no 3s in my range, it means that I'm probably bluffing a lot. So for that reason, I really just don't get to raise this river too often. So now we want to ask, can we actually call here? And we beat all the draws. The problem is like a lot of random draws come in. It's also kind of rough that some of the draws we beat are king-jack and queen-jack, which we block, right? Notice 5-4, 4-3, etc. Those all got there. So all we're beating here are some of the straight draws that we block, which may not even try to bluff. Like if our opponent's sitting here with king-jack, he probably doesn't need to bluff for the same reason I don't want to bluff either if my opponent checked to me. So we're beating diamond draws. So are there enough diamond draws in our opponent's range that will also use this small bet size to justify calling? And I think the answer is usually just going to be no. mainly because the opponent could just be betting here randomly with a 5 or a 4. And you may say, well, if they're betting with a 5 or a 4, then wouldn't you want to raise? I don't know. Depends on if they're going to hero call me or not, right? And I don't know that. It's impossible to know how the opponent will react. I mean, you can certainly think about how the general player in your games would react or how specific players like this player. You put players in buckets like loose, flashy players. Will loose, flashy players be calling raises on the river after betting 500 with a 4 or a 5 or a 10? Some will, some won't. At least that's my experience. So anyway, right here I think we have a pretty easy fold. This time, though, I must have had a live read. If you're sitting here playing live poker, as we are playing in a 3,000 World Series event, and you can just tell your opponent doesn't like their hand, now I think calling becomes reasonable. And it becomes reasonable because if the opponent's like, fine, I put out the bet, then if your opponent's not value betting anything and you think they're actually unhappy, like what is unhappy to bet here? It's going to be a lot of hands with no pair, right? So even with a bit of a read, this is a bit of a stretch. I mean, I guess if I had like King 9, that would really be a bit of a stretch. But King Queen does beat all of the busted diamond draws, and those all exist, so I guess it's acceptable. Anyway, I did call this time, and the opponent shows up with King Jack. And it's always nice when you have them pipped. I don't really like the opponent's bluff on the river, by the way. If the opponent is going to bluff the river, what is the opponent trying to get me to fold, right? The opponent's trying to get me to fold an ace or a 10 or a pair of some sort. And for 500, I'm literally never folding an ace, a 10, or a pair. And clearly I'm not folding King Queen either. And it's kind of neat. Like, I do think King 9 hands like that are probably about the bottom of my calling range. So every once in a while, I do call with a hand that my opponent does actually beat. That would be a lot of fun. It's always fun whenever you call a bluff catcher and your opponent's like, yeah, I was bluffing, nice hand, and then they show you the winner. That happened to me in the World Series main event this year where I had like ace high or something. My opponent says, nice hand, you got me, and then turns over bottom pair. It's like, oh, yeah, thanks. So every once in a while, that'll happen when your opponents don't quite know what's going on as well. And that's okay, You have to realize, like, in this spot, if the opponent is betting King Jack and I'm calling King 9 and better, we lose, like, I don't even know, like 5% of the time or something, 2% of the time. King 9 is not a whole lot of my range, and that's okay. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video for Poker News. If you want to go get a completely free trial to pokercoaching.com where you can go through lots of quizzes like that, head on over there. I have worked tirelessly to add lots and lots of content there for you. I personally have made over 400 hand quizzes. If you are watching this video, you'll probably like the quizzes that I have over at pokercoaching.com. So check it out. It's completely free to get a trial. Good luck in your games. Have fun. Have a great week. And I'll talk to you next time.